placed in nomination. Following the completion of this call, the chair will recognize those states who indicated an intention to place a name in nomination. Under Rule 16 of the Convention, the total time for nominating speeches and seconding speeches for any candidate for president shall not exceed 15 minutes. When the names of candidates have been placed in nomination, the chair will ask the secretary to call the roll of states for the purpose of voting. Under Rule 16 of the Convention, once the secretary has begun to call the roll, it cannot be dispensed with for any reason. Therefore, all states will be called. If any state desires to pass at this time, it may, of course, do so. At the conclusion of the first call of the roll, the secretary will proceed to call the names of those states which passed. No delegation will be recognized to change its vote until all delegations which passed have been given a second opportunity to vote. This is in accord with Rule 18b. Finally, the chair wishes the delegates to be aware of Rule 17, which states, and I quote, "When it appears at the close of the roll call that any candidate for the nomination for president or vice president has received the majority of the votes entitled to be cast in the convention, the chairman of the convention shall announce the question to be, shall the nomination of the candidate be made unanimous?" Now, if the delegates will please take their seats and clear the aisles, we are now ready to begin the very important business of nominating the next President of the United States. Before I ask the Secretary to call the roll of the states, the Chair has an important announcement to make. It has been customary in past conventions to permit the Chair to recognize non-delegates for nominating and seconding speeches. Is there objection to that procedure at this convention? The Chair hears none, and it is so ordered. The state that desires to place a name in nomination will so indicate when the name of the state is called. The Secretary will proceed with the call of the roll of the states after the aisles have been cleared of delegates and alternates who should be in their seats and of persons who are not legally in the hall. Will all of those persons who are not legally in the hall please retire to another place? Will all of the delegates and alternates please be in their seats? At this point, the Chair recognizes the Secretary of the Convention, Mrs. Mary Crisp, the National Committee woman from the great state of Arizona, who will call the roll of the states. Mrs. Crisp.
There's my friends over there, huh? Mr. Chairman, delegates, alternates, I shall now proceed to call the roll. Alabama.
Madam Secretary, Alabama, the state opposed to amnesty for draft dodgers under any circumstance. Yields to our great western state of Nevada for the nomination of a presidential candidate.
Thank you. May I have your attention, please?
May I have the attention of the chairman of the Nevada delegation? The chairman of the Nevada delegation. Mr. Chairman, can you assure the convention that a majority of the members of your delegation will support the candidate whose name you are about to place in nomination? Where is he? What? Go to the, will you please go to the microphone? This microphone. The chair recognizes the delegate from the state of Nevada for the purpose of making a statement.
For the purpose of nomination, can you get it? Mr. Chairman, the great state of Nevada wishes to place in nomination the name of Ronald Reagan.
This new system, by the new rules of the Republican Party, it takes some of that phony suspense out of the nominating speeches that were a tradition and a cliche of politics for so long. The man who speech. The man who speech went through 15 or 20 minutes, and sometimes the perorations lasted much longer than that before the nominating speaker got around to his last words of his speech. The man who always turning out to be, of course, the person he nominated in the very last sentence. But that's all over now. And as you heard, the gentleman from Nevada had to identify the individual who the state expected to nominate, and that sets off the first Reagan demonstration. Now, this is not supposed to be the 15-minute demonstration with music provided by the orchestra that is hired by the convention arrangements people, and will be playing for both demonstrations. This is simply an added starter. We might find that Chairman Rhodes may tell these Reagan supporters at some point that the time they take for this demonstration will come off of their 15-minute demonstration time later. That might be a prerogative of his that he would exercise here, and we'll wait and see.
Fellow delegates, may we please have order? Will the delegates please take their seats? There will be time for demonstrations later. I'm smiling.
one interesting aspect of the floor operations tonight. The Reagan people have come forth with green baseball caps tonight, very much like the Ford floor operators did 2 nights ago, with red and yellow caps, so that the floor leaders and whips could be easily identified to themselves as well as to delegates and their own supporters. The Reagan people did not catch up with that. As a matter of fact, our floor reporters have said that the floor leaders of the Reagan forces did not seem to be very much in evidence even during that crucial vote last night. What an interesting little development tonight. A gentleman in the Virginia delegation came in with a small box filled with red and yellow baseball caps and passed them out to friends in the Virginia and other delegations. And now there are a lot of people down there in red and yellow baseball caps, and they can't be told from the Ford floor leaders. An exercise in camouflage, if you please, if not just a simple practical joke. Chairman John Rhodes pounding the gavel, trying to get order again. The podium has been using music to try to soothe these excited breasts in the hall here in Kansas City. Music can, of course, excite demonstrations and also be used, they hope, to quiet them down, and it's been reasonably effective. They play a couple of patriotic numbers leading into one that they think the delegates here are likely to join in singing, such as God Bless America. That worked last night and it worked again tonight. In the earlier demonstrations, when Mrs. Ford and Mrs. Reagan came into the hall. They may be trying it again shortly here. There they go.
Question I asked him a while ago. Reagan supporters have been demonstrating almost 7 minutes now, and that wasn't even the nomination of their man. It was simply a reference by the Nevada delegation that they intend to put Ronald Reagan's name before the convention. That actually will come later.
my parliamentary answers to these questions.
Over there in the aisle. 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 Over there in the aisle
God Bless America didn't do it last time, so the band is going to strike up again. 12 minutes after his name was first mentioned in the roll call of states, these Reagan supporters just will not be denied. They are still demonstrating despite the pounding of the gavel by Chairman John Rhodes. Mary Crisp, the secretary of the convention, tried even to lead the singing of God Bless America, hoping that would do it. Nothing yet.
Will the delegates please be seated? May we proceed with the business of the convention? Will the delegates please be seated so we may proceed with the nomination of the next President of the United States? The chair awaits the pleasure of the people in the galleries. Will the people to my left please be seated? There will be other times for demonstrations. Will the delegates to my right please be seated? There will be other times for demonstrations.
Well, this is the third time we're getting God Bless America tonight. They may be importing Kate Smith before this demonstration is over. Sometimes a single tune is used frequently in a convention proceeding. Somehow or other, at the 1936 Republican Convention, somebody counted the number of times the band played "Oh, Susanna," which was the theme song of the Alf Landon campaign, and they counted over 100 times before they got through, I think. We'll see if this third time is the charm for God Bless America with the Reagan demonstration, which has now been going on for just about 15 minutes. That was going to be the full amount allotted for the demonstration when the actual nomination took place, which hasn't come yet. A lot of signs down there on the floor. You might have caught some of them. Rocky won't steal my sign. That's in reference to last night when Nelson Rockefeller grabbed a Reagan sign and started a little discussion, I guess we could call it, down in the New York delegation, where the man from whom he took the sign got angry, the state senator Douglas Bischoff of Utah, and he ripped out the New York delegation's telephone. But apparently Nelson Rockefeller referred to that on one of the morning talk shows today, and now Senator Bischoff says he may sue Nelson Rockefeller because Bischoff told our Reed Collins that he'd been consulting an attorney when he heard Rockefeller infer, said Mr. Bischoff, that I had been drinking. Bischoff's a Mormon from Salt Lake City, says he doesn't drink. He thinks Rockefeller's allegation is actionable, and he's been talking to his attorney. The Republican National Convention coverage by CBS News will resume after this message. 17 minutes this demonstration for Ronald Reagan has been going on, and Congressman John Rhodes of Arizona, the permanent chairman of this 31st Quadrennial Republican Convention, has not been able to quiet the crowds. John Rhodes is the House Minority Leader, you know. He hopes that while he is still in the leadership role on the Republican side, will elect a Republican Congress, which would, by all reasonable odds, elevate him to the speakership of the House of Representatives. He's a native of Kansas and a graduate of Harvard Law School. In that House Minority Leadership role, he succeeded a young congressman from Michigan by the name of Gerald Ford, who was named to be vice president by Richard Nixon when Spiro Agnew resigned. Dan Rather tells us that the Ford floor whips have passed the word, which obviously was also agreed upon by John Rhodes, who is, incidentally, a Ford supporter, passed the word to let this demonstration run its course, not try to cut it short. They certainly seem to be doing that pretty well. They haven't invoked the assistance of the Sergeant at Arms to get the crowd quiet and get them in their seats. They have tried 3 times to play God Bless America. That didn't have the charm it should have, apparently, with this crowd of Reagan supporters. I think we had a glimpse of Pat Boone down there a minute ago. He's a Reagan supporter. Sonny Bono is in the crowd here, as you saw a little while earlier. He's in the box next to the Ford delegation. John Rhodes trying to get the attention of the delegation as Mrs. Reagan signs autographs in her box.
Please announce the name of the other 4 states delegations which will support the nominee of Nevada.
John Rhodes is going right ahead with the procedures of the convention, but I don't know how he expects to be heard. He's asking for the names of the delegations that will support the nomination of Ronald Reagan. It takes 5 states. He's asked the Nevada delegation to name them. The 5 states will be the other 4 besides Nevada: California, Texas, Georgia, and Missouri when he gets to it.
Chairman of the Nevada delegation, Senator Laxalt, please give the chair the names of 4 states which will support the nominee of Nevada under the rules of the convention.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Laxalt.
the name of the supporting states are the great states of California, the great state of Texas, the great state of Georgia, and the great state of Missouri.
I thank the delegate. It is now necessary for the chairman of the delegation from the states of California, Texas, Georgia, and Missouri to confirm the support of a majority of those delegations for the candidate the state of Nevada is about to nominate. The chair recognizes for that purpose the chairman of the delegation from the state of California.
Mr. Chairman,
The delegate
California, yes, 167 times.
The chair recognizes the chairman of the delegation from Texas. The chair recognizes the chairman of the delegation from the state of Texas.
Mr. Chairman, the 100 delegates from Texas concur.
The chair understands that a majority of the delegates from Texas will support the candidate to be nominated by Nevada. The chair now recognizes the chairman of the delegation from the state of Georgia.
Mr. Chairman,
The delegates recognized.
in the state of Georgia, the vote is unanimous.
Will the delegate from Georgia affirm that a majority of the delegates from his state will support the nominee of the state of Nevada? Will the chairman give me his attention? Will the chairman affirm that a majority of the delegates from his state will support the nominee of the state of Nevada? I need to get an answer. To comply with the rules of the convention which we adopted yesterday.
Mr. Chairman, are you speaking the state of Georgia?
I am speaking the state of Georgia.
In the
The
state
chairman
of
did not
Georgia-
answer the chair's question.
The
question
state of
is-
Georgia does have a majority of its delegates supporting the nomination of Ronald Reagan.
I thank the gentleman. Now, the chair now recognizes the chair now recognizes the chairman of the delegation of the state of Missouri.
Mr. Chairman, this is the vice chairman of the state of Missouri delegation, and the state of Missouri, by almost a 2-to-1 majority, favors Governor Ronald Reagan.
Thank you, gentlemen. The clerk, if the delegates will be in order, the clerk will now continue the call of the roll of the states.
Alaska.
Madam Secretary, in the belief that the people of our nation hunger for better government will not be satisfied by settling for peanuts, the great state of Alaska yields to the home state of one whom we believe provides much better fare, though they be but 1/10 the size of Alaska. They have admittedly provided 10 times the amount of decibels and disruption to this convention. The tiny sovereign state of Michigan.
The chair recognizes the chairman of the delegation of the state of Michigan.
Mr. Chairman, Michigan, proudly and with enthusiasm, will cast a majority of its vote and place in nomination the name of the President of the United States.
Now, certainly the Ford demonstrators will be intent upon matching the demonstration for Reagan a little while ago. That lasted 21 minutes. We'll see what happens here now. To remind you that these aren't even the so-called official demonstrations. These aren't the ones in which the partisans are allowed 15 minutes and the band plays for them and all of that. That comes after the nominating and seconding speeches, which we have yet to hear. All that's happening now is that the convention is going through the roll call to find out who wants to make nominating speeches, and getting the confirmation that there are a total of 5 states that support the candidacy of anyone whose name will go before the convention from the podium itself. It's still possible for delegates to put names forward as the balloting takes place a little later on of anyone they wish. They just don't get the opportunity to go to the podium and make a speech about it. CBS News coverage of the Republican National Convention will continue in a moment.
CBS News continues its special report, Campaign 76. Tonight, the fourth session of the Republican National Convention from the Kemper Arena in Kansas City. This portion is sponsored by Mailgram, impact of a telegram at a fraction of the cost. Now here again is Walter Cronkite.
Well, this demonstration for President Ford is going on now for almost 10 minutes. 21 minutes were consumed in the demonstration for Ronald Reagan a little while ago, and these aren't the big demonstrations that are yet to come with musical accompaniment. Maybe we're going to see a record broken here tonight. Back in 1908, it was William Jennings Bryan's convention all the way as he sought the Democratic nomination that year. And when blind Senator Gore of Oklahoma in his keynote speech mentioned Bryan's name the first time, the demonstration started, and it went on for an hour and 27 minutes. And Bryan wasn't even in Denver where the convention was held. He stayed home in Lincoln, Nebraska, which wasn't unusual for the times. This year, for the first time, we have an incumbent president who's been in town all week directing his own personal campaign for a nomination. Dan Rather, who, as you know, covered the White House for a long time, is very friendly with many of the Secret Service people, says that the Secret Service is quite nervous about all of this demonstrating and noise in the convention hall. Security is getting rather tight around the Ford box. Probable that John Rhodes will let this Ford demonstration run the same length of time that the Reagan demonstration ran, or in other words, around 20 minutes. And at that time, he will just begin the procedures of the convention. That seemed to resume them. That seemed to work the last time to quiet finally the Reagan demonstration. When he does, he will ask that the state of Michigan put before the convention the names of the other 4 states which are required to second the nomination to bring it before the convention formally. The 4 states, we are told, that will second President Ford's nomination of Wisconsin and New York, Pennsylvania, and Kansas. Of course, the big speculation here tonight, behind all of the hoopla, is who President Ford name as his vice presidential running mate tomorrow. There has been some report that he will make that announcement around noon tomorrow. Senator Howard Baker of Tennessee is one of the favorites in the Convention City betting tonight for that vice presidential spot. Earlier this evening, he talked with Nelson Benton just off the convention floor.
There's a story out today that the list for vice president had been narrowed down to you and former Attorney General William Ruckelshaus. Can you add anything to that? Can you confirm that you're the last two?
No, I really can't. I don't know a thing on earth, Nelson. I haven't talked to Bill Ruckelshaus, but I certainly can't add anything to it. All I know is that even through today, my staff continues to work with the White House staff on sorting through that mountain of material that they requested and that we supplied about a week ago.
Well, it's been some time since you have seen the president about this or anything else.
It's been about 3 weeks. I saw him briefly today at the Unity Luncheon where the Republican National Committee had both President Ford and Governor Reagan there. But we only had a chance to speak briefly and not about that subject.
Well, did you sit down and talk to some great length with Mr. Buchan, the President's counsel, about this great file of stuff that you had?
Oh, yeah. We, well, Phil Buchan and I talked for, I'd guess, an hour or thereabouts on the day, as I recall, that I came to Kansas City, which was last Friday. But that's the sum total of my conversations with Phil, except for an occasional phone call with somebody in his office. But mostly it's been handled staff to staff.
Senator, it was kind of speculated that had Rule 16C, which would have forced the president to name his running mate tomorrow, had that failed, it would have enhanced your chances as being the nominee. Since it passed, do you think that has hurt the possibility of you being the running mate?
Nobody on earth knows, you know, unless it's Jerry Ford or President Ford, and he ain't telling. So I don't know. You could make that argument, I guess, but I really never have been attracted to it. I have no doubt that the Buchan office, the White House, was running through a whole list of people. Not just my material. So I really sort of doubt that was so. I guess the major argument was, well, they've done all of this on Baker. He's available, and why not just decide he'd be the favorite? I don't believe that. I think they've done others as well.
Incidentally, that other name which is frequently mentioned, Bill Ruckelshaus, you remember he was the Deputy Attorney General in the famous Saturday Night Massacre, and having lost his job by standing firm on that particular matter, became one of the Republican heroes of Watergate. Well, he's living out in Seattle, Washington now, and he said today that he had not been contacted today by the White House. If anything's going on his behalf, he knows nothing of it on this vice presidential run. And now John Rhodes seems to have gotten quiet out there in the hall. Let's go back to the podium.
Mr. Chairman,
The delegate from the state of New York.
the great state of New York, the Empire State, will cast an overwhelming majority of its votes for the President of the United States.
The chair now recognizes the chairman of the delegation of the state of Pennsylvania.
Mr. Chairman,
The delegate is recognized.
the great Keystone Commonwealth, not state, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, will cast a majority, an overwhelming majority, a very big majority for President Ford.
The chair thanks the chairman of the delegation from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and accepts the amendment of Senator Scott. The chair now recognizes the chairman of the delegation from the state of Wisconsin.
Mr. Chairman, Governor Knowles speaking for the delegates of the state of Wisconsin,
Governor Knowles
who
is
unanimously cast 45 of their votes unanimously for President Ford.
the chairman of the Wisconsin delegation state whether or not that is more than a majority of your delegation?
Mr. Chairman, that constitutes all of the delegates from Wisconsin,
The chair
45 totally.
The chair now recognizes the chairman of the delegation from the great state of Kansas, Governor Bennett.
Mr. Chairman, the sovereign state of Kansas is happy to advise the chair that a decisive majority of our delegates will vote in favor of President Ford for the presidency.
The delegates will be in order, and the secretary will continue the call of the roll of the states.
Arizona. Could I hear from the chairman of Arizona? Mr. Coulter.
By the rules, the entire roll of the 50 states must be called, but it is not.
Madam Secretary, Great Canyon State of Arizona passes.
It is not anticipated that there will be any other name placed in nomination before this convention. The Republican National Convention coverage by CBS News will resume after this message.
California.
Chairman, the great free state of Maryland, located on the beautiful Chesapeake Bay, Kansas.
Massachusetts.
Madam Chairman, Massachusetts passes.
Minnesota.
Mary Crisp, the Secretary of the Convention, has gotten to Minnesota in the roll call, and there have been, as expected, no further nominations for the presidency. And when this roll call is completed, then the speeches of nomination will take place, and that will set off further demonstrations, as expected, with some musical background this time. Now let's go back to the podium.
Nebraska.
Madam Chairman, Nebraska passes.
Nevada.
Madam Chairman, Nevada passes.
New Hampshire.
Madam Chairman, the granted state of New Hampshire passes.
New Jersey.
Madam Chairman, New Jersey passes.
New Mexico.
Madam Secretary, the state of New Mexico passes.
New York. New York.
New York passes.
North Carolina. North Carolina.
Passes.
North Carolina.
North Carolina passes.
Oklahoma passes.
Oregon.
Madam Secretary, the state of Oregon passes.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania passes.
Puerto Rico.
Madam Chairman, the next state of Puerto Rico passes.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island passes.
I have to back up. North Dakota. Forgive me, I'm sorry. What is your response, please?
To your being sorry, or...
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Thank you. North Dakota, thank you for the opportunity, passes.
Thank you, my apologies. South Carolina.
Madam Chairman, South Carolina passes.
South Dakota.
Madam Chairman, South Dakota passes.
Tennessee.
Madam Chairman, Tennessee passes.
Texas.
Texas quietly passes.
Utah.
Utah passes.
Vermont.
Madam Chairman, Vermont, the Green Mountain State, reluctantly passes.
The Virgin Islands.
Madam Chairman, the Virgin Islands, constituting St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John, passes.
I've done it again. Excuse me. I overlooked the state of Virginia. My apologies. May I hear from Virginia, please?
Madam Chairman, the Commonwealth of Virginia, home of Thomas Jefferson in this bicentennial year, passes.
Thank you. Washington.
Madam Secretary, the state of Washington, the capital of the world, passes.
West Virginia.
Madam Chairman, West Virginia passes.
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, having seconded the nomination of President Ford, now passes.
Wyoming.
Wyoming passes.
Did I neglect to call any other state? If not, Mr. Chairman, this concludes the call of the roll.
The state of Alabama having yielded to the state of Nevada, the chair now recognizes the chairman of the Nevada delegation, the United States Senator from Nevada, the Honorable Paul Laxalt. Senator Laxalt.
Paul Laxalt comes forward to make the nominated speech for Ronald Reagan. Our CBS News delegate count is almost complete now, with only 2 uncommitted still on our list. President Ford, according to our count, has 1,189 votes. Ronald Reagan, 1,068 votes. So 2 undetermined. One is Eliza Sprinkle from Bristol, Virginia, who is still uncommitted, and 1 vote required to be cast as uncommitted from North Carolina. Paul Laxalt is chairman of the Citizens for Reagan. He's a first-term senator from Nevada. He's the first Basque American senator ever. The Basque country being that country that comprises some areas of southern France and of northern Spain and the Pyrenees. He's the first Republican senator from Nevada since 1952. And also, if you'd like a little parenthetical side note, he's one of the few people who talked to Howard Hughes on the telephone in the last 2 decades before Hughes' death last year. As a prominent Nevadan, he was involved with Hughes in some of the operations out there. He organized the Citizens for Reagan Committee in July of 1975. Reagan announced his candidacy 4 months later in November. Senator Jesse Helms of North Carolina will be making a seconding speech. We've seen an advance copy of it, and it's a rip-snorting speech in which he lays into the Ford-Kissinger foreign policy will probably excite these Reagan delegates again when that speech begins. What Paul Laxalt has in mind, we will find out in the next few minutes.
I hereby proudly to nominate Ronald Reagan for the office of President of the United States.
Well, I don't know how much of this convention is going to be able to endure or take. Mrs. Ford seems to be leaving her box at the moment as the Reagan demonstration continues. Ronald Reagan with his choice for the vice presidential ticket, Richard Schweiker of Pennsylvania, senator from Pennsylvania. Schweiker was named as Reagan's running mate by the candidate 3 weeks ago. It was a controversial choice. It was made to bring in delegates from the northeastern part of the United States. Brought some, but not as many as believed as hoped. And today, under some suggestions from southern delegates we've been led to believe, Senator Schweiker offered to Reagan to drop out of the race.